sorry, but I miss the normal you. Before this obsession, when we had conversations, remember?
You mean my charger?
This whole ranking thing, just comparing yourself to people who...
Have you seen my charger?
We pretend to be happy. High fours like Naomi, I bet they're suicidal on the inside.
My car is here again.
Your Pelican Cove deposit, is it refundable? Like, what if this doesn't work?
Can't you just stay out of my shit?
You're my sister!
Yes, and if you cared about that, maybe you would have noticed living with you hasn't been one big rainbow sandwich for me. Do you know why I never brought any guys back here? Because I didn't want them to know I was sharing a skanky ass cave with Mr. 3 Point. Ooh.
Good luck with your performance!
Hi everybody, welcome to episode 16 of Life and Life Only, and today I'm delighted to have with me Harry of Harry's Moving Media. You've changed the name a couple of times. Is that the current name?
I have. Yeah, Moving Media is going to stick for as long as it survives. So yeah, originally Harry's Moving Castle, and then I realized at some point I'm probably going to get a lawsuit from the Japanese because it's based on the Studio Ghibli film, for those that don't know. And then I changed it to Harry's Haunted House for an October. It was mostly in just for a Halloween 1 month thing, but I loved it so much that I just thought, right, sod it, I'm keeping it for a year. And then I changed it again to something that's a midway between Moving Castle and something that probably won't upset as many people. But because I am making media, ultimately, I thought, yeah, that's going to be the home for it.
Yeah, well, actually, this podcast, Life and Life Only, is a quote from a Bob Dylan. It's a Bob Dylan.
Really?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't been contacted yet. But anyway, welcome to the show. And could you just introduce yourself and your YouTube channel, please?
Yeah, sure. So since 2014, I've been reviewing and analyzing TV shows and movies, predominantly Doctor Who, because that was the show that I kind of had the most beef with at that time, because I come from a kind of background of film studies. I kind of intertwined that into content that I make because most of that kind of field is writing, and I thought I could write something and then just record myself saying it and put all the pictures and things on top of it to illustrate my points. Ironically enough, they do actually accept video essays as submissions in universities now, which I think is flipping fantastic if you want to put in the effort for it. But honestly, if you can get away with just writing an essay to it that way, because it'll take you so long to make these things. Anyway, back onto the point. So yeah, Doctor Who was what I started with. And then as that got a few thousand views, I thought, right, I'm going to try a stab at my other favorite TV show, Black Mirror. And I came on at just the right point because that was when it moved to Netflix. And I had plenty of episodes to comb through, to the point of those Black Mirror videos being the reason mainly why I'm able to do YouTube as a full-time gig. Yeah, I'm still waiting for another episode to come out so that I can make a bit more dosh. But, you know, I don't want to assume that they are the reason for my success. But hey ho, that's me or my channel in a nutshell. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Just a couple of questions actually about Black Mirror. Well, obviously the creator was Charlie Brooker. Are you familiar with Screen Wipe? Have you seen some of that?
Yeah, I've probably, in all likelihood, I've seen every single one of them because I'm a huge fan of him in general. Personally, my favorite one was him coming back to do the COVID-19 one because
I saw that last year. Yeah.
At the time, it was just so relevant, interesting, hilarious, etc. And I think there was a kind of, will he do another one? Will he, won't he kind of thing? And then he did do it and it was amazing. But yeah, I really do like Screen Wipe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a great believer in that. Making fun of things, obviously not in an offensive way, but we need humor. That's why we need comedians, I'd argue, in society. For anyone who hasn't seen the Screen Wipe, it's obviously a comedic look at media, and there's some great clips on YouTube. There's one actually on you remember the story of Jade Goody, from Big Brother. I mean, obviously in the end it's a tragic story, but I mean it's just the most crass, the whole way it was handled and everything. And I'm going to get onto another one which was to do with the McCanns.
Oh yeah.
I'll get onto that a bit later, I think. But so Black Mirror, yeah. So would Nosedive be among your favorite episodes? And if not, what would be your favorite episodes?
Well, I actually made a top, 17 list back in 2018, I think. And
Right.
Nosedive did indeed take the crown at the time. It was close tied with White Christmas. I can't remember the exact reason why I preferred one over the other. This was a fair few years ago that I made that, but after rewatching it again in preparation for this podcast, it still is my favorite one of the whole bunch. So aesthetically pleasing, so well written, and just a thoroughly satisfying adventure from start to finish.
Yeah, and I remembered it as longer as well, because there's so much packed into it. And in fact, I had to give up making notes this morning. I mean, there's just so much packed into it. Yeah, it's funny. Again, we didn't prepare this, listeners, honestly, but White Christmas is actually the one I was going to mention, because I'm a big fan of Mad Men as well. So the John Hamm connection there. Broadly speaking, do you prefer the early sort of lower budget ones or the later sort of high budget ones?
I think they both have their pros and cons, really, because in a weird way, if you're trying to get into Black Mirror, the national anthem is kind of a bit of a weird one to start it off with, because although if you're a fan of Charlie Brooker, you're going to get it from the offset, because its reputation now is of a technology-based kind of show predominantly. You're going to be like, wait, what? I was expecting, all the AI discussions and things. So, but it's only when you get to that second one, 15 Million Merits, that I think that it really sticks. I really do like the earlier series, probably because they apply the less is more concept. I don't think there's a single show that I know where they only have 3 episodes, but it's for a season or a series, whatever you want to call it. And then obviously when Netflix comes along, throws so much money at it and says, we bloody love this, let's get absolutely loads of episodes in here once a year. I'm sure there must have been some kind of creative burnout by the end, though, because I found the 5th season to be quite underwhelming and disappointing. So it's really a matter of where you're coming at it from, but I do kind of appreciate it on the whole. I can't really say I prefer one or the other, but I definitely can say with certainty that the 5th season was an absolute dud. Right.
I can't remember exactly when I stopped watching, because I came quite late to the party, so to speak. Obviously, then I binge watched a lot. So the national anthem was the pig one, obviously. That was the very first one. I liked the one where the guy, it's a dinner party, and the guy thinks that his girlfriend is cheating on him, and it turns out she is. And there's like an extension of Facebook where, you can access like someone's life, a video of somebody's life events, something like that. So yeah. Broadly speaking, I mean, I'd say Black Mirror, some of them are almost like films, aren't they? I mean, that White Christmas one is pretty much film length.
Absolutely.
You and I, looking for the video, we're obviously different ages, which is an interesting thing. So we get like a sort of cross-generational appreciation of Nosedive. But I'm a big film buff as well. I've got a film podcast called Film Gold, plug. In the last 10 years, because of the availability of older films, in the last 10 years, I've sort of lost track of modern stuff, and I've kind of gone back, and I am a big fan of the black and white era and the old stuff. So I think the less is more thing with the budget. I think there's nothing wrong with a big budget, but it depends how you're using it. And if the film starts to become about having a big budget, then it loses me. And I mean, I'm a big Black Mirror fan. I like I say, I can't remember the latest episode I watched. If I had a criticism, I found that there's quite a sort of sadistic edge, like in White Christmas. If you remember, they set the guy so he has to experience 10,000 years every second or something, and it's like the glee that he's going to have a good time, and then I found that there was a sort of recurring theme where they'd end like someone would be in a sort of endless spiral of hell. I can't think of the specifics, so that put me off a bit. But yeah, I think it's a great achievement anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
So much to talk about, so let's get into it. So so this episode is obviously Nosedive. Just talk briefly about the lead actress, Bryce Dallas Howard, who's Ron Howard's daughter. I didn't realize this, but she's actually Elton John's mum in Rocket Man. Did you know that?
I haven't seen Rocket Man. This is one of those films that everyone has been badgering me to death to watch. And I'm unfortunately one of those people that has only seen Bohemian Rhapsody and thought, oh, yeah, I'm sure that will be just as entertaining. Truly, I'm not like an Elton John fanatic either. So it's one of those things that will it'll be on the bucket list. I'm sure I'll watch it eventually. But I didn't know that she was in that film either. She seems to have sort of sprung up in a lot of unconventional places. For example, she's directed, I'm not sure if you're a Star Wars fan, but the Mandalorian TV show that they made based on that she's directed a couple of episodes of that, and I didn't even know she was like director material, but apparently she is. So and a Star Wars fan apparently, but it's very surprising where she's kind of cropped up all over Hollywood, really.
Yeah, I guess Ron Howard's daughter. She's got the connections there.
Absolutely, yeah.
But, yeah.
Not sure how much nepotism plays into it, but I still think she is a very talented actress all the same.
I mean, I probably have seen her, but I don't remember her. I remember her from Rocket Man. I wouldn't say Rocket Man's a must-see, but it's pretty good. I'm not the biggest Elton John fan of the world, but you can't argue with some of the tunes, I suppose.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to say no other actress could have played this, because I'm sure a lot of them could, but I just thought she's just perfect. I mean, the scene where she's giggling in the mirror and she's practicing the smile, it's just, brilliant, and then she can do anger fairly well as well,
Yeah, they did a great job as well on like her outfits as well. I mean, just if we're going from outfits to the general aesthetic of the whole thing being like a very, I don't know what the opposite of sharp colors is, but it's almost like Neapolitan ice cream. That's the best way I can kind of describe it. But yeah, everything that she owns, from the props to her dresses, are all that very kind of peach pink color. It really does reflect her pitch perfect in every way, only to have everything kind of thrown down because of almost a real desire to just be the best, as the rating system implies for everybody to have at some point in the story.
But what I love about her character actually is that you can kind of tell from the beginning that her heart's not really in it, because she's trying so hard, whereas Naomi, who we'll get to a bit later, she's obviously faking it. She's obviously trying too hard, but it just seems like it fits her somehow. I don't know if it's the writing and if it's the actress's face, but it's something about it that that behind all the trying hard, there's a genuine character.
Absolutely, yeah.
I suppose the opposite of sharp would be maybe washed out. They used washed out
My
colours.
partner said that very word, and I couldn't remember it when we were watching it together, so that would be it.
Yeah, they kind of use that in films, I suppose, to show a sort of gloom or some kind of negative thing. But I think it's pastel perfection. I don't know if you used that. Did you use that in your video or someone else used it?
I don't know. Maybe I should have watched it again. I've got this weird sort of Jim Jarmusch attitude towards my videos, because he's one of these people that once he's finished with a video, he wants nothing to do with it afterwards. He'll just leave it in the hands of his marketing people. And I just let the YouTube algorithm do the rest, because if I look back on it, I think I actually tried watching my Nosedive review back again, and I thought, oh my God, the audio quality, what am I talking about? This, that, and the other. And I just couldn't watch it again. It was just kind of, that was released like 4 years ago. It's a totally transformed individual to who I am now. But, at the same time, it is truly a pleasure to even talk about that kind of thing, because I don't think I've ever been invited to talk on a podcast about Black Mirror. It's always Doctor Who. So thank you for that either way.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
But it's something that, I thought would have been almost dead and buried, really, because like I say, there's no new episodes of Black Mirror on the horizon. I think especially because of the gloomy reality that we find ourselves in at the moment. Anyway, it would seem almost too much to put in there. But then again, if you look at any of the Oscar nominations at the moment, they are going to be all very depressing as well. Just reflective of the times, I suppose.
I think with Black Mirror, and obviously with this episode, that reality is creeping up, so it becomes almost more relevant. You know what I mean? Yeah. All right, we're going to go more or less scene by scene, perhaps not labouring it all too much. But we see her jogging. I was actually watching a video where they said that she'd had an eating disorder, but I didn't actually pick that up. But anyway, we see her jogging, and obviously her friend Naomi seems to be just constantly in like yoga poses. And It's kind of like how New Yorkers see Los Angeles.
Yes, definitely.
I'm a big Woody Allen fan.
Same.
There's a film where I think it's Annie Hall. He goes to Los Angeles at like Christmas, and the weather's good, and he says, "Oh, does Santa get sunburned or something like that?" Like he's so disgusted by the fact that you shouldn't have like a sun in the winter. You don't get the seasons and everything. On your video, you describe the world as Facebook meets TripAdvisor, and I was thinking it's Instagram meets Uber. So in a roundabout way, we're kind of saying the same there.
Well, that's the thing. If memory serves, Instagram was kind of in its infancy at the time, but almost in very typical Brooker fashion, he's able to pick up on the trends and is able to have this level of insane foresight at what's going to come. But at the same time, Instagram is owned by Facebook, and watching this episode again, just every clip they had of the user interface of Tripbook, as I called it, it really is like just swap the 5-star rating for that little heart button that just flashes red every time you scroll down, flash, scroll down, flash. Fortunately, I mean, I don't know if it's fortunate or not, to be honest. I'm not one to judge. I mean, I don't really use Instagram. I probably, if I were to use it for anything, it would be to promote my channel, but I haven't ever made use of it in that kind of way. But definitely Instagram and Uber would be probably the 2021 comparison. I think probably now the Facebook is sort of the thing that is less used by younger people. And
absolutely.
Like you say, Uber, same thing, a young people thing, because whenever I go and see my family, I went back a couple of months ago after the lockdown lifted, and I just, because I'm based in London, and just the weirdest scenario of, oh, you guys don't have Uber here, do you? And I was like, it's not, it sounds really stupid to say out loud, because it's like, you just realize how much you've got in the city. But I like that comparison, a modernized comparison of Instagram and Uber, definitely.
Okay, so in your video, you talked about the attention economy. And this idea that we're all celebrities, or we're all potentially celebrities now, and obviously Big Brother and all that reality TV. Just going back to Screenwipe for a second, the clip I find just sort of darkly hilarious. Obviously about Madeleine McCann. If anyone listening from overseas, there was a young girl who was snatched in Portugal, and it's certainly not something to laugh at. But the thing that I found amusing was on Screenwipe, there's a clip of Sky News. Basically had a reporter outside the McCanns, the parents' house, all day, essentially treating them like celebrities. And there's one bit where they cut to them. They cut to the reporter saying, yes, the McCanns haven't left their house yet. So these basically, don't mean this the bad way, but nobodies, non-celebrities have become celebrities because their daughter was snatched. Yeah. And now we're reporting on the fact that they haven't left their house, And Ricky Gervais in Extras did something kind of in the same ground. If you remember when he goes into the Big Brother house, and there's a woman whose only claim to fame is that her son was shot in the street. But the comedic part comes from the fact that she's soon to be releasing a single. So she's, she's got a pop career out of it. It's the best comedy for me is like an extension of reality. You take reality and then you extend it a little bit.
Well, I suppose if we can't laugh at the darkest aspects of our nature, then what's the point? I firmly believe that comedy is derived from tragedy anyway. That's my drama background coming in there. But, if you can't laugh at the worst parts of our reality, then we don't have humor at all. That's what I believe anyway.
Absolutely. Yep. So let's go back to Nosedive. So everyone's got these contact lenses. So basically, essentially, you immediately when you see someone, you can see their social rating. As I mentioned earlier, we see Lacey practicing different types of laugh in the mirror. And then we get the cafe scene. What can you remember about that? The cookie and the coffee. Do you remember?
I tell you what, when you mentioned the cookie bit, and you also mentioned about a video that was talking about an eating disorder, I think that's probably where they made that connection. It's certainly not something that kind of runs through the story in a meaningful or notable way, but it's just the fact that she kind of spits out the biscuit, and she doesn't like the coffee, whatever she's ordered. It looks too fancy to be enjoyed anyway, to be honest with you. But it's very interesting either way, because we were wondering actually, and I don't think they ever actually establish how often you can make a rating, because obviously it's just based on each social interaction. But what if you're having like what if me and you having this long form discussion, are we going to keep rating each other every 15 minutes or so kind of thing? I kind of wish that's the only thing that I was thinking, if they'd have established that would have made a lot of other moments in the story make a lot more sense. That was the only thing that kind of distracted me from every other beautiful aspect of that. But that little thought that popped into my head and unfortunately sort of lingered throughout the rest of the episode. I was like, are they gonna establish it? No, they don't. But that's fine. It's such a tiny thing. And this is just me in a nutshell, just finding the tiniest little nitpick.
Oh, don't worry. I do that as well. That's fine.
Yeah. But I was just thinking as well, just because we were talking about when she's practicing her faces in the mirror, for whatever reason, that reminded me of, so I've got a younger sister who's 13 years old, absolutely loves TikTok, right? And for whatever reason, it just reminded me of how she will just incessantly practice this tiny little 10-second dance thing. And it really struck a chord in that moment. I was thinking, that's exactly what my sister does. Like, it's just so surreal. Again, one of those things where Brooker is able to kind of just foresee these bizarre changes in human nature as a result of technology.
Yeah. And I noticed as well, the cookie obviously had a smiley face as well, which is quite amusing. Yeah, to answer your question, I'm not sure. Suppose in theory you could arbitrarily, if you were having a bad day, just go around. And as we see later, I was going to get onto this later, when she's hitchhiking, she gets marked down for absolutely nothing except the fact she's got a low rating. Yeah. So we'll get to that later when we get to the scene with the truck driver, which I thought was amazing. Yeah, brilliant. So there's just so much in this. And then, we know now that, you get a dopamine hit when you get some likes. And I think you mentioned this in your video. I think when you watch Nosedive, you have to be a bit honest with yourself and say, are none of us guilty of doing any of this ourselves? I mean, I can say hand on heart, I've never posted a picture of my dinner on Facebook, but I do remember, I can't remember if it was like an ex-girlfriend or a member of the family. I'd made a really good meal and I sent a photo to them. So I didn't send it to the world. But, I think, we shouldn't get too sort of high and mighty about this and say that,
of course,
none of us ever do this, No.
And the weirdest thing was when I was watching this, 2 years on from the release of that video was when I started being able to do this full time, the YouTube thing, I mean. And whenever I look at, it's strange how a lot of the kind of, the dopaminergic stuff that is embedded in social media's design, it doesn't matter what website you're using, YouTube, Facebook, they all play the same game. And YouTube especially, I would know more so than the others, because whenever I look at all of my uploads, they have a countless amount of statistics. The main one that always draws my attention, though, is the kind of, I get a little percentage of the thumbs up and thumbs down. So if the video gets 100 likes and 2 dislikes, that's 98%. So, and sort of incrementally upwards. So obviously I consider a successful video to be something in the range of 98, 99%. And as soon as it deviates from that, I immediately start worrying, oh my God, I'm going to fall through the cracks kind of thing. It's really, but at the same time, as I was watching, again, going to a bit ahead with the truck scene, that character who just stopped caring about it entirely, there is a lesson to be learnt from that, in that despite the fact that I could upload a video that loads of people don't like, it doesn't matter. It's just a video, it really, and there is this sort of a real worry about personal image and almost your own personal image brand, if you like, because what you are putting out to all these people is so, it has to be your best self, because otherwise no one's interested. And that's exactly how, like I say, every single social media platform is playing this exact same game. And that's why we have Nosedive,
Absolutely. I have 3 podcasts, and obviously iTunes, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, has to be part of, it's an important platform. And I mean, I'm earning a little bit of pocket money from it, but it's essentially a time-consuming hobby. But it is a labor of love at the same time. But there's a weird thing on iTunes, and I've never quite worked this out. Essentially, you kind of have to ask your audience to give you ratings, and obviously you're going to ask for a 5-star rating. And reviews, I think, help, because I have a podcast about John Lennon, and as far as I know, I'm the only specialist John Lennon podcast, certainly on iTunes. But I'm still not at the top of the list, which is kind of annoying, because other podcasts who've done one episode on John Lennon, because they've got bigger audiences, they're higher up the list.
Yeah.
But occasionally I do look at ratings and reviews, and how's this for like delicious irony? Podcast that I listened to, a Beatles one, got a 1-star rating because they asked for a 5-star rating. And this is the rationale. The review said, why are you asking for 5-star ratings? If I want to give you a lower rating, that's my right. It was along those lines.
Right.
But unfortunately, we have to play this game. You have to get those high ratings. As far as I know, I think the whole sort of analytics, it kind of goes a bit above my head, but I have some understanding. Anyway, so let's get to the next bit. I'm not sure of the total chronology, but there's a scene in the office, and then we get this character, Chester, who's broken up with his boyfriend. And I think the pertinent bit was, I think one of the colleagues says, we are siding with the other guy, we are siding with his boyfriend. So, you've got all this group mentality. And I mean, I haven't worked I'm an English teacher, by the way. I haven't worked in an office for years, but I remember that thing of, if you're the outsider, you're essentially trapped in this sort of glass cage. But I think it's very freeing to be an individual, isn't it? When you've got the confidence to go against the grain. It doesn't make your life easier, though, I'll be honest. What do you reckon?
Oh, truly. I think in a weird way, that's kind of what happened. Going against the grain is exactly what I did when I started talking about Doctor Who, because I was thinking nobody else seems to see a problem with this show in its current state. So I had to kind of make it extremely clear that I had a problem with it. And obviously, how you formulate such an argument takes a lot of time and a lot of practice and a lot of reviewing in the meantime. But in relation to this Chester character, the thing that I kind of found interesting about it was, in the same fashion as the thumbs up, thumbs down thing with YouTube, it's not like he has a 1 rating. He's not like, obviously later on when he's trying to get back into work, that's the kind of the result of everyone siding with his ex. But you have the division that comes from controversy, which we have even now seen more of than any other time ever before something horrendous will happen. I mean, I guess the most current issue I could probably say is Israel. I don't want to go into that because I have no idea. I can't talk about Israel, but looking at it from the outside, all I can see is 2 different sides arguing at each other, and the result is people's unhappiness. And this is exactly what happens with Chester. And it's the mechanisms behind the technology that are causing this unhappiness. And, even though everyone tries to, Lacey especially, it just tries to ignore it, because it's easier to do that than to actually pick a side. Whether picking a side is a good thing or not, don't know. But either way, I think it's those mechanisms that are causing people like him to be ostracized and thrown out of society, just as the truck driver we see later on.
Yeah. I'm a big psychology guy. I studied it at college, and obviously humans are social animals. We are absolutely hardwired to go into groups. But are you familiar with this phrase, sheeple?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people hate it, and it sounds so patronizing and so offensive. Yeah, I'm not going to say anymore. I'm just going to introduce the word sheeple into the conversation and then sit on the fence. No, it's this thing about, we are social animals, but I think we do kind of cop out a little bit, and you do have an easier life if you go with the herd, so to speak.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah.
One of my friends did a personality test thing online. I don't know whereabouts, what website it was specifically for me. And I came out as having a kind of, I don't know how psychologically sound this is, but it's basically surmised that I was a lone wolf personality type.
Yeah.
So that probably feeds into my desire to speak about an opposing opinion, even if everyone else disagrees, and also why I'm doing this job where, even though I have a considerable audience, I don't meet any of these people. I don't talk to any of these people. They are just numbers on my screen. It is a really weird thing to kind of conceptualize. I wonder if you have the same whenever you see someone's clicked on your podcast, or if you have any insight on that.
I mean, do you exchange messages with them, though?
It sounds kind of elitist, but the main people that I interact with are the people on my Patreon page who genuinely want to support the channel and keep me doing what I'm doing, basically. But I would love to do some live streaming, just to sit, I don't know, play some games, talk to people, whatever, because that is something that I think is sorely lacking at the moment. There is just such a disconnect between myself and just your casual viewer who's not paying anything to watch it. And I think that that's something that's kind of been lost in the financing of this channel, in that, I'm having to direct my focus more at the money side of it than the actual people who made the channel as popular as it is to begin with. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's fair enough. I mean, if you make a decision to use Patreon and to try and do it for a living, you're giving a service and people are paying you for a service. It's only because we live in this bizarre free culture, if you know what I mean. This thing where you're just obligated to give everything for free. And you just, I don't get many donations, and it irritates me slightly because I've put out, I mean, the John Lennon podcast is my main one. This one we're on now, Life and Life Only, will probably become my main one because after 100 hours on one person, even if it's a very interesting person like John Lennon, in the end, I'm surely going to run out of material. But anyway, I've put out 100 odd hours. I edit very carefully. So it's sort of probably about 500 hours of editing. And honestly, editing it eats away at my free time as well. Yeah, it is the thing. But then when I listen back to it, it is quite satisfying. You get this nice... as you'll hear in a week or so, hopefully.
Of course, yeah.
All right, the next part. This is the apartment. This is really interesting because so Lacey wants to get this apartment. She's living with her brother. We'll get to that in a sec. And she needs a 4.5 rating. Now, are you an Alan Partridge fan?
I am an Alan Partridge fan in the sense that I have really enjoyed what I've seen, but to my memory, I can't think of a single Alan Partridge, exclusively Alan Partridge thing, like off the top of my head. The thing that I remember of him the most is in The Day to Day when I think he's the weatherman or the sports guy or something like that. I am a fan of him, Steve Coogan as an individual for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'll explain why I brought that up because the estate agent. Have you seen any of This Time? The one that's just come out?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay. But for anyone who has, I was absolutely blown away. Like the woman, the estate agent, is actually an English actress who's in the latest Alan Partridge. Susanna Fielding, her name is. So it's bizarre because you've got Bryce Dallas Howard playing an English woman in Rocket Man, and then you've got an English actress playing an American in this.
Interesting.
But she does it very convincingly because the first time I watched this, I never clocked that she wasn't American. So kudos for that. So we get this kind of... how did they get that fantasy image? So you see Lacey with this really attractive guy. How did they do that in the story?
In the story, it's kind of like an advertising hologram. It's probably nothing too consequential to get your head around, but I know that on the outside, after she's had the viewing, there's like a big poster of her in exactly the same fixed sort of romantic ideal image, but as soon as she turns her back away from it, it fades away. And that they fill it in for the next person. So presumably what they're doing is they'll cater that kind of image to whatever individual they are. And if it's another, say, single woman, they will have another very attractive, beefy guy to kind of almost sex appeal up the place, which to something like estate agency or just housing in general, to sexualize that just sounds so insane. But obviously they use that for a really almost comedic and very almost saddening aspect, because you realize just how almost lonely the Lacey character is. Even though truly, I think that estate agents probably see so many people that they know from the offset they aren't going to be able to afford this. Exactly. So they'll try and wiggle them into this trap, if you like, to get them to be in the place, and then they'll have to suffer financially for it, whatever it may be. I'm looking at this very cynically, but it seems that that's the kind of angle that they are going for with this. That just how phony this estate agent is. As soon as she says, what is it? Oh, do I qualify for it? And she just goes, no. Like, that is so blunt, and the smile has gone, but there is a catch to it. You can do this, that, and the other. We can offer this, that, it's so brilliantly handled. And I'm sure he's probably writing from experiences as well, Brooker, in that. I'm not even sure when I looked in the credits, the teleplay his name wasn't in there, but I don't know if he had the story for it or something. I'm not sure.
I think from my understanding, I don't think he actually writes. I mean, I haven't checked the other episode. I don't think he writes them. I think it's like, they do this with things like, even things like EastEnders. They get someone to tell you what the story is, start, beginning, end, and then they get the sort of hack writers, if you like, to write the dialogue. So presumably the same. So he probably does the stories for all of them. Yeah. The point I was going to make about this is that, again, it's not that different from real life. I mean, if you go to an estate agent, you could really broaden this out, and you could say that we are all acting, as soon as, you work from home even, but let's say that you're going out to an office or something. As soon as you leave your house and you go out in the big bad world, we're all acting. We probably just don't realize a lot of the time. And with my job as an English teacher, what I kind of bring to the table is I do be myself. And I think my students, I mean, they're mostly adults. I don't teach kids, so that they pick up on that. So I'm lucky in that sense that I can more or less be myself, and I do it sort of willfully as well. But, we still have to act, it is all a game out there, isn't it, really?
Yeah, for sure.
And then we get to the social media advisor. Now, in your video, you compared this to a therapy session. So I totally agree with you. But can you flesh that out a little bit for us?
Yeah, not that I know much about therapy really, but it seems that this whole social engineering aspect to this society is something that they have to monitor and keep updated with. Otherwise, you'll just slip through the cracks and you'll eventually become the truck driver in the worst case scenario, I suppose. So I'm assuming if you are in therapy, you are going to, in some way, shape or form, make yourself a bit more sociable, because I'm assuming that, if you are going to therapy, there is something that's not, it's difficult to really nail why I put that there. Maybe I had some bright idea about it back in 2017, but I think that it's probably just to do with the kind of social end of things, like just trying to make yourself a better person or keep yourself almost falsely happy about the situation that these characters find themselves in. I don't know.
I mean, it's just kind of the one-on-one situation. Yeah, I'd say it's somewhere between a doctor, a GP and a therapist, But again, not totally unlike reality, because with my John Lennon podcast, I have considered going to Fiverr.com and offering to pay someone to try and raise my profile. But the problem for me is that I don't really like having my face out there. I love audio. I've been a radio guy. I mean, obviously I liked TV as well when I was a kid, but I've always been fascinated by the radio, and I love the audio thing. And I like the idea of hearing somebody's voice and then not finding out what they look like. I don't know why. I've always quite like that. So with
that's interesting, because I've definitely had this idea to not show my face before, but at some point I had the courage to do so. And it's not been something that I do very frequently, because I have to then consider the visual component. I spend enough time getting this audio set up absolutely crisp and perfect to then have to do lighting, makeup, all that stuff to make myself look, again, a very nosedive, to make yourself look really good. And I'm not interested in that, because then it looks even more phony as a result. And I've definitely found that with any time I've tried to watch, I don't know, say a vlogger on YouTube, it feels so false and strange. But at the same time, I think that there are definitely circumstances where I find myself filming myself and thinking this is exactly what needs to happen. I don't know, for example, when they changed up the audio of a certain Doctor Who theme in one of my videos, I just decided to get in my dressing gown and just do this massively weird dance to it. I have no idea why, other than I really appreciated the quality of that bit of music that they had. So it works sometimes, but I suppose in podcasts, it's a bit different. I'm just thinking, because I used to watch a lot of Joe Rogan, it's all visual on his end, but there's nothing stopping you from just listening to it. And I know that he's kind of changed his format now and then, but at the same time, because he's doing something like comedy, not all of his podcasts are about comedy, of course, but having their facial expressions there definitely helps. But again, I guess it depends on what you're discussing, because if you're talking about a movie or something like that, then what's the point in having the visual side of it? Because it just doesn't seem to quite make sense. But anyway, where were we?
Well, I was just going to say that, I mean, most people, I mean, again, this is a psychology thing. Most people are visual learners, the majority of people. So, if you don't want to show your face, then, like you said, you need some kind of, you're obviously working on having images. With Nosedive, you had obviously scenes from it. So I think you need a visual element there, I suppose, to attract more people. But trying to be as natural as possible within it, that's the thing.
For sure.
So, this social media advisor starts talking about sphere of influence. And then we get this phrase, quality people, which I thought was quite funny, 4.8. And then soon after that, of course, Lacey, she spills a drink on a 4.8. And of course, the 4.8 immediately gets the phone out. You're going down,
Yeah, I do wonder if the higher rated people have more of a kind of sphere of influence on the ratings that they give. So, for example, if a 4.8 gives a lower person, or just your average person, maybe their 1 star is more effective at dragging down other people's ratings than perhaps someone of a lower stature. I don't know.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that, but that's what I intuited. Yeah, because presumably Lacey, when she's going to the wedding, all these quality people are going to give her 5-star. So that has statistically that has more cachet than the truck driver giving her 5 stars. I think you're right about that. Yeah. And then I just wanted to talk about, there's a few scenes where you get a kind of backlash against this, which are kind of, I found quite heartwarming, frankly. So we see Lacey in a lift and she offers a croissant to her co-worker, and the co-worker totally sees through it and gives her 3 stars. The cab driver, who's got that brilliant look on his face while he's watching this just cringe phone call, the cab driver gives her 1 star. That was funny.
Definitely kudos to all the extras performers in this. They are just so good.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people say, TV shows and films, that a lot of the strength is in the bit parts, so to speak.
Yes.
And then let's talk about her brother. What do you think of those scenes? So is her brother is he doing virtual reality or something?
I'm assuming so, because they were talking about how he gets points from his friends. So the people that he plays with in the virtual reality in a kind of an online gaming scenario, if you like. And interestingly, obviously, I think that also plays into the little bit we were talking about, where the people who have higher ratings are going to be more effective at giving people higher ratings and stuff, because obviously all the people that he's going to be playing with are going to be like 3.8s like him as well. Like that really brilliant line from Howard. Do you mind if I swear?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, she just says, like, why would I want to stay around with you 3-point-fuck? Like that just, it nailed everything. Because, all of his friends are going to have that exact same rating, and I think that they are probably in some way, shape or form getting all the down ratings from members of family who just want them to go and get a life, So it's very interesting. He's played by have you seen Happy Valley?
No, I haven't. No.
It is a really great cop show. Well, I say a cop show. It's a British police show about a very nasty man who is kind of in the family of a very high up police officer, and he plays the bad guy basically. And he is a real piece of work. So it's like, and he's a British actor as well. Very good American accent on him as well. And he is just so home-ridden, if you like, because of this. Why would you ever go out if you can just go out in virtual reality? It's a tiny little aspect that I'm sure is probably playing a huge role in the background of this society, where people aren't going to engage in all of this stupid rating systems and just stay indoors, because then, you're never going to get downrated if you're just at home, apart from maybe by your mum to make breakfast or whatever. But I don't know.
Yeah, they're sharing an apartment, aren't they? And again, I'm reminding you of all the great things in your video because you haven't watched it. So you should be lapping it all up now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You pointed out that essentially the colours are blue and pink.
It's very well designed, isn't it? Yeah.
which is like what you learn from being a kid. Blue is for boys and pink is for girls. So obviously it's very deliberately done. And he's quite scruffy, and she's trying not to be scruffy. She's trying to be, pitch perfect all the time. So that was good. And he's obviously, even though he's involved in this virtual reality, he represents some kind of normality. And the line I love is, I miss the normal you. I found quite touching. And then just after she says the 3-point fuck, of course, because I think she's going, and then she forgets something and she comes back.
It's the little rag, the little doll that she carries around with her. Yeah.
Rags, of course. And then I think she rates him down, and of course, bad move, because then he rates her down.
Yeah. It's the beginning of the end, isn't it? The start of the spiral, I suppose.
Yeah, this is where the nosedive starts. I just want to mention one thing, rather than talk about it later. She ends up hitching with this, like a reality show convention or something.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing I remembered from that is that one of them complains that their father gave him a 1-star rating. And my question to you, could we ever get to this point where members of our family are rating us? Surely not.
I suppose it depends on the parent, because I'm imagining there was some kind of twist around this character. So this is the one who's in the toilet cubicle, has the sort of dingly things on her head. She when she asks Lacey what her favorite character is, she says, oh, it's the character that you're playing, but in a more kind of straightforward way. And she says he doesn't have a gender or something like that. And I think that, you're going to have these sort of, unfortunately, hardline conservative parents who just think that all of this transgender LGBT stuff is going to insult them to no end, and they'll just use their power to downvote them in a unfortunately nasty way. But at the same time, I think that that's an inevitability, because in every single situation a child and a parent or parents find themselves in, the child is going to have far more altered attitudes because they don't want to be like their parents. I didn't want to be like my parents, and I'm sure that most people probably didn't want to be like their parents. They just see them as old fogey people. And like I say, you know, you're going to have some ultra conservative parents who are going to think, oh, they are the spawn of the devil because they're dressing up like this and they're gay or whatever. You know, it's you know, the sheeple. There we go.
One thing I wanted to bring up, are you aware of the boiling frog analogy?
That rings a bell, but I don't think I know it, no.
It's very, very interesting, and it's very important for if people's never heard of this. It's the idea that if you put a frog in boiling water, it will jump out. But if you put a frog in cold water and very, 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 very slightly raise the temperature, it will boil without realizing it. And the reason I'm bringing it up is that that's what is happening. Like I said, would we ever get to this point where we get this world? I mean, obviously, they've got it in China to some extent. I haven't really researched that a lot. I think I was too scared to, frankly. But this boiling frog thing is very important because if, for example, let's say, if you saw, for example, a screenshot of a web page from, let's say, 10 years ago, I think you would be shocked to see the difference. And this boiling frog thing is really the key to societal changes, in my opinion, because people get sucked in. It's like if you look at a picture of somebody 10 years ago, someone you know really well, your mother or your father.
Yeah.
You'd be shocked to see how different they look, but because you've seen them regularly. So I think this boiling frog thing is massively important. I suppose I have a bit of a conspiratorial mind. I do have some evidence for a lot of it as well. It's not just making theories up, but I think that there are reasonably dark forces who are trying to, it could be just capitalism, it could be just for commercial gain, it could be for power, but I think there are quote unquote dark forces that are trying to lead society in a certain way. And we all think that we would never get to that. You know, we're not going to be as stupid as having social ratings. That's only for China and North Korea, but, you know, it could well creep up on us. So,
well, if we're going by that kind of logic, shall we say, I mean, China's the king of production at the moment. And if we think that we can just ignore that country because, it's the same thing as, you know, with Lacey ignoring her 3-point friend. At the same time, they are fundamentally important to our wonderfully lavish way of life here in the West, you know, and there's no getting around that. So to kind of ignore their own leaps and bounds in the ratings thing is so kind of on the nose that you know, it could happen, but it's everything else surrounding it from like a social media point of view that really, it's headache inducing and almost frightening that this episode came out like nearly 5 years ago. I can't believe this.
Yeah, it's just amazing. But we're going to try and find a conclusion to all this.
Yeah.
How we could perhaps, I don't know, contribute to stopping this happening. But I mean, on the subject of China, I mean, I know Westerners who are learning Chinese because they're convinced that 10, 20, 30 years from now, China's going to take over. And China, this is a tangent for another day, but China does have America in a kind of economic stranglehold to some extent. Yeah,
exactly.
You know, holding a lot of debt, for example. Anyways, let's get to, again, if this was a film, the airport scene, I mean, there's so many classic scenes. It's just amazing. So Lacey goes to the airport. She gets, we talked about the cab driver earlier, get these, just these horrendous phone calls with Nene, you know, Naomi. Yeah, just total fakery. Oh, there was actually one thing I wanted to mention that I think was absolute genius. Did you notice on one of the phone calls, just as the phone call's ending, you see Naomi's face change? Yeah.
They
actually see what she really thinks.
Very intentionally do that. It's kind of weird because obviously they keep up the fakery so hard that it's almost exhausting to them. Exactly. That they suddenly just go, oh, thank God that's over. Like, you know, that would be what they say to their partner after the phone call, Naomi especially. But yeah, very, very good.
It's so good, isn't it? Just the subtlety. Yeah. I think we've kind of flashed forward about a few weeks because I think the wedding was coming up in a month.
Yes.
So the idea anyway that Naomi, this friend, also the brother intimates that Naomi, who's this 4-point, whatever she is, sort of stereotypical like hot girl, has shagged Lacey's boyfriend. I think we get
Greg.
That. Yeah. We get that idea. So anyway, we're sort of 3 weeks later, we're coming to the wedding. She goes to the airport. Her flight's cancelled. And there's a standby flight, but she needs to be 4.2. And I wrote this down. She's fortunately gone down to 4.183.
Yeah. It's insane, isn't it?
Mainly on the strength, perhaps, of the cab driver, thinking about it.
Well, there's a nice connection later on as well that, like, the woman truck driver had to give her, or the bed that could have saved her husband's life went to somebody that was only 0.1 higher.
Yeah, so then Lacey suddenly forgets who she is or remembers who she is perhaps, and she swears, and the look on the check-in lady's
She
face,
is fantastic, isn't
she's
she?
brilliant. The way she talks, she's like, could you modify your language, please, madam? Is that brilliant?
And then she'll suddenly go extremely stern, like just that's it, right, security, come on over here, like that's it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. And how he's even like, just not who you would expect, like the fake smile has even come into him like a security guard, and it's not even like he needs to use his brute force. It's just the social, like, I'm going to make sure that you're going to get double damage for the next 24 hours. Behave yourself. And that's it. He does, that's enough to frighten her into, just trying to keep face. But obviously that is, again, another part of the nosedive that, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse for her.
Yeah. And then, the security guard, as you said, with a smile, with this fake smile plastered on his face, you're docked at one point, and then double damage just sounds exactly like some sort of video game, or
Yeah.
It's a great phrase to come up with.
Well, Brooker is very influenced by video games, as far as I understand it.
Oh, is he? Right.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. And then, of course, the great touch, just as she's leaving the airport, the check-in lady, you hear the beep and the check-in lady, but you can't see my smile. You can't see my wonderful fake smile, listeners, but she rates her down, and absolute genius. And then, so she decides to drive. It's a 9-hour drive. I can't remember at which point, but Naomi calls her and says, basically, I don't want your wedding because you're down to 2.8 or something like that.
Yeah. It's in the middle of when she's with the convention people, because she has to answer the phone. And then by the end, she's like, I've never watched your fucking show. And that's it. It's really good.
That's it. Yeah. So I guess that's after, that must be after the electric car. So she gets an electric car. It runs out of charge. The model, I guess because she couldn't get the good model because her rating has gone down, the chargers they have are too modern, or the model of the car is too old.
Yeah, and the car itself's interface is in like an Eastern European language. I've no idea what it is. It's hilarious.
So then she starts to hitchhike, and again, a genius moment that we referenced earlier. You see, like, she's hitchhiking, a couple drive up in a car. They go, should we pick her up? No, she's got 2 point whatever. And then the next car just marks her down purely because she's got a low rating.
Yeah.
And it's this idea, I think the truck driver, we'll get to that in 2 seconds, but she says something like, it's incredible how fast you can slip off the ladder. And it's the equivalent of really seeing someone on the ground and then kicking them, isn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Kicking them when they're down.
Yeah.
So then we see the truck driver again, an absolute classic scene. She's called Susan. She's a 1.4, middle-aged lady. I was surprised, actually. I was thinking when I watched this last night, I was thinking they could have made more comments about ageism as well in society. That perhaps, because this truck driver, I mean, she looks kind of middle-aged, maybe 40. But I was thinking they could have added some scenes where perhaps people in a subtle way get marked down just for being older. Well,
I think that they did it in an even more subtle way, because if you look at the opening scenes, not a single elderly person is there. It's all young people, and they're all doing the sort of same. But it's kind of like, I don't even think you see any children either. That would have been something to really kind of wonder if they'd been handed these things.
Seeing like really 6-year-olds.
But you look at all of the people that are sort of sat in the cafe area, that they're probably no more than 40. They're almost like, I don't know what the word is, but people that are just working. They're workers fundamentally. Most of them have probably got very affluent jobs in whatever way, shape, or form. And it did make me wonder what exactly Lacey did, because as far as I was aware, it looked like she was just checking her social media the whole time. But the age thing was probably done in a more subtle way, just by the way the environment is shaped. We don't hear from their parents or anything, from Lacey and her brother's parents or anything like that. So there may even be like a level of ostracization of the elders and all the rest of it. Because even at the wedding, you do see elderly people, but you never really know what their ratings are. They're kind of kept in the background. They're just sort of there. If anything, the most you see of them is taking pictures. You don't see them doing any of the rating or anything like that.
Interesting. Yeah, I wonder if it's sort of implied that perhaps this rating system is sort of 16 to 60 or something like that, age-wise.
Maybe. Yeah,
maybe older people are just so disregarded that nobody even bothers rating them, or maybe they haven't got the heart to. I don't know, but in this world, it seems like they probably would. It'd be so propagandized after a while that would happen. Yeah.
All
right, fantastic. So we get to Susan, this truck driver. I love the bit where she asked Lacey what she's doing. And Lacey goes, I'm going to a wedding. Do you want to hear my speech? No. There's actually a movement I became aware of called radical honesty. Yeah. It's a group of people. And well, I guess we've seen films. There was even a Jim Carrey, wasn't there? Liar, liar. It's the idea that you don't get very far. And, you know, if you told only the truth, you probably wouldn't have any friends within about 2 weeks, you know?
Yeah.
That idea. So,
well, truth is an ugly and terrific beast, but it's still, you know, it's exactly why people try to avoid it at all costs.
Absolutely, yeah. Another great touch. Did you get the touch of the blue and the red thermos, which is a sort of a Matrix reference?
Oh, do you know, I hadn't even thought about it being a Matrix reference, actually, but it's still like, you know, for whatever reason, that was something that really stuck with me, you know, that one's got coffee, one's got whiskey, and, you know, she gives it the red one as a gift, you know, just, you know, somebody who is totally selfless to the point that, you know, they're willing to just give away all their whiskey to somebody who they've just met on the street. You know, there's no kindness in this world. Everything is done for this gain. And I suppose like that mirrors our own world in a weird way, in the same way that, you know, unfortunately, if you look at a homeless person and they've got say a mobile phone in their hands, the immediate assumption is, are they actually homeless? No, they might be. They might just have actually acquired it and are getting up on their feet, but we don't think about that. We don't give them any money, etc., etc. And, you know, that's the same thing as when Lacey's on the road and she just gets downvoted for basically just being there. You know, it's the same thing in my mind as that.
But yeah, I mean, there's definitely in our society, there's, what's the word? It's almost like an inbuilt disregard for people who look scruffy, people who look poor. Yeah. I'll give you an example. Actually, I used to live in Spain, and this is not to diss Spanish people because I thought they were, on the whole, really nice. But there was a weird thing where there was a traffic lights quite near my house, and there would be immigrants, obviously poor. I would guess they're probably from South America because obviously speak the same language. So you get a lot of South Americans that live in Spain. And they would be there with a sponge and a car, what do you call it? Windscreen, like washer fluid or something.
Got you, yeah.
And what would happen is someone would drive up at the lights and without asking them, just to earn, you know, for God's sake, you know, €1, they would start cleaning their windscreen. And almost to a man, you would see these people, again, you can't see me, listeners, waggling my finger. Just like, no, get away from my car. I'm not going to give you €1. I mean, they're cleaning their fucking windscreen. Excuse my French. You know, it's not as if they're even asking for €1 for nothing. No. You know, and that used to really get on my tits, to be honest. But it's so much of propaganda is almost like unconscious or subconscious. So there are things we do where if we actually analysed it, we'd say, God, I can't believe I do that. You know, if you see, sorry to go on a tangent, but if you go on a metro and you see like a really like dirty, smelly person who's obviously a beggar, sit next to someone, there'll be a kind of look of disgust on their faces. And again, I'm not judging because I think, you know, we're probably all guilty of this, but it's interesting. It's that thing of like society, like I say, kicking people when they're down, you know. Yeah, and, absolutely. You know, obviously there's goodness in society, you know. I hope to God we never get to a full-on nosedive society.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Susan, she explains that her husband, she says, oh, I see myself in you and I used to be desperate. And I think Susan said she used to be a 4.6 or 4.7.
Something like that. Yeah, something significant.
And you see like Lacey's, her eyes for a second light up. It's like, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
And then Susan says, my husband got pancreatic cancer. There was an experimental treatment. And as you said, you know, they gave the bed to someone who was 0.1 higher than her. And then she talks about, my friends didn't like my honesty because she says, I suddenly said, oh, fuck it. You know, I'm going to be myself. So, great scene. Anything else about that scene?
I think because we've kind of covered it bit by bit as we've gone through it. I think we've pretty much torn it a new hole. I think we've cleared that one.
Yeah. All right. Then we get this thing with the sci-fi convention. Again, we've talked about that already. So Lacey basically kind of hitches a ride and then kicks out when she admits she hasn't watched the show. Again, honesty. And then kind of getting to the end, then we see Lacey, the truck driver's giving her the red thermos with the whiskey. Suddenly Lacey's like, she's drinking whiskey. There was something with quad bikes. And
that particular moment is really quite lovely to me because I think Max Richter's score for the whole episode is just so wonderful, pure, and just like it's like a piece of classical music that just plays like the same thing throughout the whole episode, but it's always in a kind of altered way, in a really slightly unique way as it goes on. But if you really listen carefully when I might have mentioned this in the video, but when she's out on the street, like actually on the highway, you can hear the sound effect of the downvote, the do 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 do, and that becomes a part of the score as well. And it's really lovely because again, you kind of come to expect it to be exactly the same thing throughout the episode, but it incorporates all these other kind of elements sonically that just make every moment or every scene really, really great that has that kind of music in it.
It's funny, I hadn't noticed the music, and often that can be a good thing for the music, unless it's something really recognizable like, Star Wars or Jaws or something like that. Yeah. Often a score, it kind of drifts in and out, and it's I didn't even think about the music actually, but obviously it had an effect because it's adding to the overall world, isn't it? Yeah. All right. So by this point, Lacey appears at the wedding again. Classic scene. By now, she's dirty, she's scruffy. Again, in your video, you made the point about her makeup running, and it almost looks kind of like black tears or the weird way.
You can't kind of tell if it's like mud as well. It is obviously the makeup, but obviously her being covered in all this black stuff as well. It's all in her hair. She looks like some kind of wicked witch by the end. It's really something visually.
Yeah, I don't know if it's something about me, but I just started to admire her more and more, the worse she looked, Yeah. And then she turns up at this wedding, and I don't know what to say really, but it's just, I just love the way it's done. And of course, the interesting subtext is that we find out that the groom who's marrying Naomi is almost certainly in love with his best man, isn't it? So essentially he's gay, he's pretending he's heterosexual to get this, apparently like quality woman, Naomi.
That's interesting. I hadn't picked up on that at all.
Yeah, I shouldn't take credit for all of this because that blue and red matrix thing, I've got to come clean and say I read that somewhere. But, no, I did watch one of your competitors did an analysis.
Truth be told, obviously when this video was made, there wasn't this huge, I was just filling in this void of people talking about Black Mirror that just wasn't there at the time. But then, as soon as the later series come out and that everyone sees how popular the show is, it's like, right, I'm getting on that. I'm gonna do my own take on it kind of thing. I know that the main one that I kind of always find for some reason recommended to me in the YouTube sidebar is like a sort of ending explained video where somebody will take apart the ending of the Black Mirror video in about the same time as I take apart the whole episode. So it must be something really that I've missed in the kind of endings. Because I remember that was the one criticism I had with the Nosedive analysis, which I truly and weirdly I think is the best video I've ever made. But the one criticism I had for it was that I didn't talk about the ending enough. Right. And I have no idea what the reasoning for that was, but clearly somebody who's doing endings explained can fill in where I've left off kind of thing. So I have no idea, but it's...
Well, let me give you an opportunity now then. Is there anything you want to say about we'll talk about the wedding first and then the very last scene. So come on, go for it. Is there anything else?
But the wedding wise, I still love that it's the men that are getting up to sort this out as though, it's not like somebody has come in with an axe or a gun. The only threat is her honesty. And that's the thing that's kind of coming through to me in the story is how she's talking. Obviously, it's not socially acceptable to perform this kind of thing in a wedding or even show up like this, but because she's been trodden on at every single opportunity and stabbed in the back by the bride herself, if she went there without a hitch, she might not have even made it for whatever reason. The way I'm seeing it is the more that she got pushed down, the more incentivized she was to get there. But whether she even has another goal, to be honest, is debatable because it's not like she has anything else in her life. But going back to how they almost follow her around and she's just moving in almost circular fashion around this wedding scenario is really almost depicting the spiral that she found herself in up until that point. And she's going to keep riding that spiral until she's done, until she's finished her speech and she's had her say. Because even the actual speech that she has herself, obviously when she's rehearsing it to her brother, it's like, is the tear too much? Am I doing this wrong? And he is just like, you sociopath, and yet when you see her at the end, it's not just like fakery there. It's like an honest to God depiction of somebody who has just absolutely lost it. And it's just really nice that transformation ended up kind of coming through visually, but also, how she's so determined to keep moving, or even though she's at her final destination, because she's been moving towards that point. And then obviously then when she does get thrown to the ground, the microphone is still in front of her mouth.
Yeah,
it's
she's
still going.
Yeah.
And then pulled through doors almost like to the afterlife in a weird way. It's really interesting. I love that final scene.
There's some reference to lower rated people, such as a truck driver, as dangerous in the sense that, I suppose, I mean, you're saying
I don't bite. That's what she says. Yeah. The truck driver, she says, I don't bite.
That's it, yeah. But honesty can be a weapon. I mean, you can really, if you really wanted to, particularly I was talking about an office environment earlier. In a way, I'm quite glad to not be in an office, because I think if someone was getting on my case, you know, maybe it's the sort of exhibitionist side I have. I would be tempted to call them out in front of everyone. So I'd have to check myself there. But talking about weapons, though, I mean, she does grab the knife, of course. And it's not really clear whether she was actually going to use it. But, you know, she's at the end of her tether and all she's got left is the honesty.
Yeah.
And everybody's terrified, you know. Again, going back to this thing about the beggars on the train, you know, almost the weapon they have is that no one wants to go anywhere near them.
Yeah.
You know, they call them, in the Indian caste system, they're called untouchables. And we were saying earlier, you know, perhaps old people in Nosedive would be untouchables, you know.
Yeah.
All right. So finally, we get to the last scene. So she has her contact lens removed so she can no longer rate people. She's in prison. We don't know how. Probably in the world of Black Mirror, probably 1,000 years, I'd guess. You know, 1,000 years a second. And then we get this fantastic scene where her and a fellow prisoner start insulting each other. And I love how the camera closes in on their mouths. It's like, fuck you, but all done with a smile. That's the whole point. You know, they're finally liberated.
Yeah, like obviously when she's on the video call to Naomi about, you're getting married, and she just screams like absolutely bizarre. And that's, I mean, I kind of used that in the thumbnail of the video because that's probably, if anything, something that I would have made a reference to in the video had the image of her screaming in the video call and her screaming and the final shot of the episode didn't make such a perfect contrast anyway. I wouldn't have, you know, I didn't feel the need to probably talk about it. That's probably why I didn't go on too much about the ending, but it is still a wonderful scene all the same, because, you know, it's just, you know, there's no context whatsoever to why the guy opposite her is in that case. But again, he has the same problem of just being honest and you know, he's able to say whatever he wants. And now they are, in a weird and morbid sense, more free than they were out in reality.
Absolutely. And isn't there a scene where you see Lacey smiling? I can't remember what she's smiling at in the prison. Again, it's almost like the first time you actually see a genuine smile.
Yes. I think she's just looking in the mirror. I can't remember, but I
can't remember. She spots something. I can't remember what it is. Anyway. Yeah, and you get these great insults. I mean, you and I were talking about Kubrick off mic, weren't we?
Yeah.
I don't think it's on the level of Full Metal Jacket, you know. The gallery sergeant.
Oh, God, yeah.
Insults could be extremely entertaining and quite liberating, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, I think we've done a fairly deep dive.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Not bad.
No, not at all. Compared to how long was my video? Like 17 minutes? Yeah, we definitely have scooped out all the innards and laid them on the table.
I mean, also, I've got to presume people have seen it before they watch a video or listen to a podcast like this. But, right, final thoughts. Let me ask you a question, actually. How do we, in our everyday life, how do we guard against society becoming like Nosedive? Any thoughts?
So my own kind of tactic, like I've almost programmed myself to do. So obviously being on YouTube as a professional creator means that I had a time when all I did was check the videos and their performances and how many likes and how many comments, reading everything, you know, and that was so consuming, and all the notifications that were just constantly going on. I think the first thing that we could potentially do is stop the apps from hooking you in the first place. Because if I've seen anything, and I don't mean to disrespect any of my friends, but I know that them being my age, and even the younger ones, I could talk about my sister, for example, they are on it just too much. And it's not a kind of, you know, they could be doing worse things, but in a social context, especially after watching this, the thing that I think would be, that I myself have tried to adopt, and I think that other people should probably adopt, is turn off the notifications for starters, because if they lure you in to begin with, then you are going to be on it. And the more people use it, the more they will be able to the companies will be able to get away with putting more addictive things in there to keep you on there once they've hooked you in there.
Exactly.
So if YouTube gives me a notification, oh, you've got a new comment on your video, but obviously at this point now I'm getting probably a comment every hour, every minute, it's just insane how much activity goes on it. If I had everything alerting me all the time, I would never leave it. I'd just be looking at it all the time. If we are looking at this from the point of view of two people talking about social media in 2021, the natural progression does seem to head towards something of more judgmental nature, like the one that we see in Nosedive. And the only way that I think that you can at least stop the tide is by getting as many people to just not be on social media as much as they can be. I know for one thing that unless I'm expecting an email, I won't check my emails. Probably I'll give myself an hour in the evening if I need it, and most of the time I don't. And that's the wonderful thing is when you take time out and not look at it, you realize, oh my God, I would have just been spending hours and hours refreshing my email. And yet all I would get is, I don't know, some promotion from Cafe Nero or something. Like no one needs that. But yet that your phone will act in exactly the same way as if you have an important email, even though the phone has no way of differentiating that whatsoever. So everything that it alerts you to is high priority, and you need to just turn the high priority down because otherwise you'll be on it all day.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. I mean, for my side, notifications is one thing. Again, all these companies essentially, if you play the game too much, you're encouraging them. And again, I'm in my 40s, a little bit different for me because I've known a world without all this. I knew a world without the internet. I knew the world before I had a mobile phone, for God's sake. I knew the world when Tom Baker was Doctor Who, but that's another story. But, my fear, I said, I don't have kids, but I've got 4 nephews and a niece. And my fear is kids growing up in this world and not knowing anything different. And propaganda of all forms is a 24-hour, billion-dollar, billion-pound, billion-euro business. It is constant. And I think, unfortunately, technology is intertwined with propaganda, as is capitalism, of course. What other things was I going to suggest? Yeah, you talked about programming yourself. I was going to say I train myself. One of the things is to keep my attention span as well, because that's another thing that creeps up on you. It creeps up on you, the fact that you find yourself not being able to concentrate. And a good, I'm a big music fan. A big example is iPods. I make myself listen to a whole album rather than skipping.
Same here.
Skipping,
Yeah. I know that it sounds kind of, again, don't mean to diss my friends in any way, shape or form, but I've been to people's places or outings, whatever, where they just can't listen to a song for more than a minute. They'll just skip on to the next one. It's like, oh, have you seen this one? Oh, have you seen this one? It's like, there's a really weird kind of, the attention span. It's exactly, that has definitely affected people to a startling degree. I was just thinking of something else that I could also recommend is read a book now.
Read a book, yeah.
And I know that sounds really condescending and high and mighty and lofty, but the thing is, what most people are doing on their phones is reading. They're looking at what people have written, and there is also that obviously Instagram's a bit different, where there's a picture, but there is also a bit of writing underneath it. That it's all text. It's all for God's sake, just pick up a picture book if you really need to. But it's just it's such a skill that if I could look at myself 10 years ago, the one thing I would say to myself is read more. Because by the time I got to uni, I could not, and this was the time when everyone started suddenly having an iPhone and everyone was so busy doing that instead. My ability to pay attention and try and read anything was just, it was really hard. But obviously because I kind of, I think in a weird way, with the success that I've seen on YouTube, I've just try to get away from it all because it's like my occupation, and but where people who have far more ordinary occupations like yourself, it seems almost enticing to go on your phone and just because it's like, oh, I'm not doing what I don't like right now. So that's, and I'm not to say that people don't enjoy their jobs, but when you spend most of your life working in a job that you may or may not like, you're going to come home and want to just be on your phone because you want to keep up with your friends, catch up. It's a social thing, which has also been exacerbated by the fact that we've all been stuck at home for the past year and a half, And, like you said, you fear that people are not going to know any other way. And, the children that have been brought up in this weird scenario that I hope isn't prolonged for much longer. If we are stuck back in a lockdown again, we are just going to go back to the phones and have calls and things to keep ourselves socialized. And then, we'll be back to square one again. But here's to hoping that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I sincerely hope, anyone listening to this, I think we're offering some pretty decent suggestions here. And in terms of offending people and sounding condescending, I'm a bit like Susan, the truck driver. I'm just like, fuck it, One of the great things about getting slightly older, I know society thinks that like, 30, you're finished, But one of the great things is that you do start to get, I don't know, less self-conscious, let's say, perhaps. So I'm putting it out there, if anyone thinks it's condescending, sorry about that. But, I think we've contributed a pretty decent, what we've done, nearly 2 hours. Wow.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've really had a good dismantle there, I think.
All right. Hey, listen, thank you very much. I may well be contacting you in the future if you want to tackle, perhaps White Christmas would be, because we both say that's a favorite. So
yeah, absolutely. I've really enjoyed talking to you, man. This has been a thorough pleasure. I'm so glad we got to do this.
Excellent. Just stay on the line for a sec.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just give us your channel again, and if you've got anything else online, go for it.
So if you want to check out my reviews or analyses of Doctor Who, Black Mirror, if that's your kind of thing, go to youtube.com/Harry's Moving Media, or if even easier, just go to YouTube and type in "Did It Suck?" and there you will have it. Every single one of my reviews will just pop up there. Love the YouTube algorithm in that way. But you can also catch me on Twitter at HMM_tweets. Not sure I had to change that recently, but had also a bit of a mental breakdown on Twitter the other week. Never mind. That's another story for another time. That's basically my two ends of things. But predominantly the YouTube channel. Check that out.
All right, lovely. This will go out fairly soon because actually I haven't got a backlog. For months and months I've had a backlog of John Lennon episodes and film episodes and this podcast. Well, we'll talk in a sec off mic anyway. So
sure. Yeah, no problem.
Officially, thanks very much and good luck with everything.
Thank you. You too, man.
Cheers.